Hi, welcome to Freeman's Hindman. I'm Annie Wu, VP and Head of the Department at Asian Art.
And I'm Ben Freeman, Senior Vice President and International Specialist.
Please join us for a masterclass in collecting Asian art. Today, we're going to dive into key collecting categories in Asian works of art, one being Chinese Yixing Zixia wares, and the other is earlier Chinese gold and silver jewelry.
So I'll start with the Yixing wares. Yixing pottery has been created for centuries in China. It's a specific region, and the clays most often are these dark brown clays here. However, you can have a wide range. You can see a lighter clay here, reds, purples, greens even. And so particularly in the 17th, 18th century is when artisans really started to use this material to create these exquisite pieces for scholars and the literati.
Well, that's very good. Thank you for the introduction then. And tell me a little bit more about where these wares are from, which collections that these have been with.
Great, absolutely. Great story. So we love the objects, but quite often they're really resonant when you know the history behind them. And these particular pieces here have a wonderful story behind them. These were originally known to have been in the collection of Mr. Peng Yuanji. How do we know that they were in the collection? There's a very rare catalog that was put together by Peng Yuanji and one of his artist friends, probably sometime in about 1910, 1920. And it's wonderful because there are descriptions of each of the objects in his collection, as well as ink rubbings of the pieces. So in other words, the actual piece, a piece of paper was laid over and ink was rubbed over the paper to create a rubbing impression. And this is very literati. It's very sort of elegant. And think about it, 1910, 1920, you have photography. And so if you really wanted to preserve the collection for posterity, why not take pictures and have your description? But this is a more elegant way of creating these pieces. And so not only do we have the description of all the pieces in the collection, but we also have the ink rubbings, the rubbings of the seals, the rubbings of any inscriptions. So for example, there's an inscription which you can actually see the inscription here as a dedication. And because we can match the pieces to these ink rubbings in the descriptions, we know that they come from this collection. It went to another collection, a Taiwanese collection, the Lee collection, which was later offered D&J Frankel, art dealers from New York City. And from there, these particular pieces from the collection, they had maybe 30, 40 pieces from the Lee collection, all originally from the Peng Yuanji collection. And these particular pieces were acquired by Mr. J. Butterman, who was a friend as well as the legal advisor for the Frankels. So, wonderful story. And that collection, when it was offered by the Frankels, was also illustrated beautifully. So we have this continuing documentation of the collection, which is quite rare for pieces like this, and particularly because Chen Ling Yuan was so famous. A lot of copies, a lot of pieces that were made to emulate his works. If you can trace pieces that were attributed to the artist back earlier, there's a greater chance of them being actually works by the artist, and thus these are more desirable.
Wonderful. And why these three coups hold such high estimates? Can you elaborate a little bit?
Absolutely. So, well, first off, there's the provenance that we were talking about. So the fact that we know that these were in the collection circa 1910, 1920, whenever the catalog was actually put together. So we know that these are not modern productions. And the fact that these are attributed to one of the master potters, as we've mentioned before, extremely important. And in themselves, they're very elegant and also very interesting. So for example, this little coupe here, very elegant, finely potted piece. If you could hold this in your hands, it's actually quite lightly potted. It's the form of a small eggplant, with an inscription probably dedicated to the person who had commissioned it from the artist. And this piece here is what is known as a puzzle cup, peach form with little nuts, facsimile the nuts on the other side. And the little gentleman on the inside here, possibly Shola, the god of longevity, holding the peach in his hand. But the trick to this is that you can only fill the wine cup so high, the level of the wine so high, before it starts dribbling out. And it's fun because with the description of that particular piece, not only do we have the physical description of it, but we also had a little bit of commentary. So in other words, the concept of the wine cup that can only be filled so far is a reminder to the drinker not to drink too much.
We actually did an experiment on it.
Really?
If you fill it above the shoulao, because there is a hole underneath the vessel,
Yes.
the water will come out, sort of reminding everyone not to drink too much.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Exactly. And this little piece, you think, oh, it's a teacup, but it's actually quite small, and it may actually be a wine cup. And it's just, again, something for if you have hot wine, heated your wine, you pour it in, but it's very elegantly formed, and you can see how delicately created the outline here is. And again, all these pieces are, the quality is very, very high. So the attribution to 10 yuan, it makes sense, but then also you have this provenance that adds to it. So I've just given you a very brief introduction to some aspects that one should consider when one is thinking about collecting Yixing pottery. I'd like to shift gears now to my colleague Annie, who would like to introduce another work from another private collection of exquisite small objects, but this time of gold and silver.
Yes, this is definitely one of my favorite collections that I've ever handled. Here we are in front of us are 3 fabulous lots from the Renlu collection of Chinese early gold and silver jewelry.
So for you, what are some of the more unusual pieces? I see you picked a few pieces here. Can you tell us a little bit more about them?
Yes, absolutely. I think the importance of this collection is that it covers many categories, including the wares that we would see from horses, from warriors, leading to...
Oh, and sorry to interrupt. What's the time span of the pieces?
Oh,
When are these created?
very good question. It ranged from the late Shang Dynasty through the 19th century, Qing Dynasty, 19th century.
So Shang Dynasty, how long is that? 2,000, 3,000 years?
3,000 years ago. So it's pretty fascinating. So yes, so as I was saying that, we have harness wares and we have garment wares and we have hairpins and we also have about 10 to 15 lots of earrings in the collection.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of personal adornment here.
Exactly.
So tell us a little bit about the pieces that you've chosen.
Yes. This one is my favorite piece in the collection. It's a hairpin. It was dated back to the Ming Dynasty. And we probably know during the Ming Dynasty, all the ladies wear certain headdresses.
These were ladies in the court, presumably.
In the court or in wealthy households. So they would wear headdresses or hat. In Chinese, it's called dizi. And when they have the headdresses on, they put various hairpins to either make it more elaborate or secure their hair. And this hairpin is called tiaoxing. It usually sits at the center of the dizi headdress. And what's more amazing about this piece is that you can see at the center it sits a lady immortal. Her name is Magu, and she is holding a tray full of peaches. And she is actually a symbol of longevity as well.
As like the coup.
Yes, we have our lady and we have our gentleman here. I think they match very well. And as you know, longevity is a common subject matter in all the Asian works of art, Asian decorative arts. So I think it's a good representative. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. And what's the decoration on this? This is sort of unusual, isn't it? This is a horse trapping, so it's something that would be a part of the trappings of the horse.
Yes. So when we first saw this piece, we thought it actually sits. We know that it's part of the harness ornaments, but at first we thought it would sit in the forehead of the horse.
Right.
But actually, no. It's more like closer to the body. It's decorating the horse's body, and as you can see, it's chased with a very adorable fox, and the fox with wings. Usually, with earlier wares, whenever we see animals with wings, it tells us that these animals or these objects actually came from the tribes, not central China. When we took a closer look at the fox, of course, you see all the lines are very smooth. All the round sort of have round corners. This shows that actually this is a later Han Dynasty piece because it was refined and heavily influenced by the Han culture.
I see.
It certainly helped us with dating. now I have the partial set of belt buckles, belt plaques here. You probably remember it, back in the days, we wore garments. We had to put a belt around our garments. And these plaques would be inset on the belts.
So belt. And you'd actually have quite a few of these. So this is really just a partial set. You might have 15 to 20 of these plaques dotted throughout the belt.
Or more, 20, 25 and above. So yes, it's quite unusual to see the entire set.
Yes, yeah.
We're very happy that we have 6 plaques here. They're all finely chased with flowers, the various flowers.
Beautifully chased, yeah.
Yes, so I think it speaks for not only the craftsmanship back in the Ming Dynasty, but it also shows a hint of scholars' taste for the objects that were mostly made in the Ming Dynasty.
And we see belt plaques quite often in jade, but rarely in gold. Is that right?
Exactly. That's why it makes them so rare. I believe when I was doing research, there were probably only a few gold plaques existing in the world.
And actually, that brings me to another question I have for you: is how often do gold and silver jewelry and adornments come onto the market? You know, especially pieces from, say, the Tang and the Song and the Ming Dynasty, these earlier pieces.
I'm glad you asked. No, not very often that we see them in private collections. And I'm glad you asked because really early Chinese gold and silver jewelry is a very niche category with very limited collectors. Not many of the objects are known to general public. I believe so far, maybe I've only seen 3 or 4 good private collections. Most of these pieces were actually found in archaeological sites. Therefore, most of them are stored away in private museums or public museums. That's why I find it very important that we not only have private collections in mainland China, in Taiwan, in Hong Kong. Right now, here in the United States, in LA, sits this beautiful Renlu collection.
So we're delighted that you could join us for this masterclass on some aspects of Jisha pottery, as well as Chinese gold and silver. And we invite you to contact us directly if you have any further questions, and also join us for any future masterclasses, which we will be producing.